A lot of women believe intimacy automatically creates emotional closeness. They feel the chemistry, the tenderness, the emotional high afterward, and they start hoping this is finally the moment he lowers his guard and lets them fully in. But sometimes, the very thing making you feel more emotionally attached is not affecting him in the same way at all. What feels deeply bonding to you may only feel temporarily pleasurable to him. And that misunderstanding is where so much heartbreak begins. Because while you are walking away from the moment feeling more connected, he may simply walk away feeling satisfied. You are thinking the relationship just became deeper. He is thinking the experience felt good in that moment, but nothing fundamentally changed. If you do not recognize that difference early, you can spend a long time giving more of yourself, opening your heart wider, trying harder to create closeness, while still feeling emotionally shut out. Once you truly understand this dynamic, the pattern starts making sense. More importantly, you stop chasing connection in ways that never fully reach him and begin to understand what actually creates emotional attachment for someone like this. Most women naturally try to connect with men in the same way they themselves feel connected. They become softer, more emotionally open, more vulnerable. They believe intimacy will slowly melt the walls between them. And honestly, that idea sounds beautiful. It feels natural. But with emotionally guarded men, it often does not work the way women expect. The painful truth is that intimacy can affect two people in completely different ways at the exact same time. One person may feel safer, closer, and emotionally bonded, while the other person unconsciously starts feeling pressure from the intensity of closeness itself. So even if the physical connection feels strong, the emotional experience underneath it may be completely different for each person involved. It is almost like walking through the same doorway, but arriving in two separate places. You leave the moment feeling hopeful, attached, and emotionally invested. He may leave feeling relieved, relaxed, or pleased for the moment, but not necessarily more emotionally available or more certain about commitment. That is why so many women say, "We had such an amazing night, and then suddenly he became distant the next day." It is not always cruelty. Sometimes closeness itself creates tension inside him before it creates attachment. And if you do not understand that, you will keep interpreting his behavior through your own emotional experience instead of understanding what is happening inside his. Imagine trying to warm someone while they are wrapped in a heavy coat. Your warmth is genuine, your care is genuine, but it never fully reaches their skin. That is what happens when a man carries fear, stress, or emotional defensiveness around intimacy. Even the sweetest moments can get filtered through tension and self-protection. The eye contact, the cuddling, the tenderness afterward, all the things that naturally create emotional closeness for you, may not land as deeply when part of him is still guarding himself internally. That is why women often leave these moments believing, surely now he feels what I feel. Then suddenly he becomes quiet, distracted, emotionally flat, or distant again. And that emotional gap can feel devastating when you hoped intimacy would finally change everything. But if this cycle keeps repeating, it is not random. It does not mean you are too emotional or asking for too much. It may simply mean you are trying to build emotional connection through a doorway that does not fully open for him the same way it opens for you. Once you understand that, you stop turning every pullback into proof that you are not enough. For many emotionally avoidant men, physical pleasure works more like temporary reward than lasting emotional bonding. It gives relief. It gives escape. It gives a momentary release from stress, pressure, or emotional noise. But relief is not the same thing as attachment. A reward says, "That felt good. I would enjoy that again." Attachment says, "This person matters deeply to me. I feel emotionally connected to them. My life feels stronger with them in it." Those are completely different emotional experiences, yet many people confuse them. Think about comfort food. You may crave it, enjoy it, and return to it often. But enjoying something does not automatically create deep emotional loyalty to it. In the same way, if intimacy only activates pleasure without touching his deeper sense of partnership and emotional safety, he can continue returning to the experience without becoming fully emotionally anchored. That is why chemistry alone is not enough. Passion alone is not enough. Even constant physical closeness is not enough. If intimacy stays trapped at the level of pleasure only, the relationship can become a cycle where the bodies keep reconnecting, while the deeper emotional bond never truly forms. What actually creates stronger connection in many men like this is shared experience, shared momentum, feeling emotionally joined rather than emotionally cornered. A lot of men do not naturally connect through emotional language first. They connect through side-by-side energy, through teamwork, through shared direction and mutual experience. That is why men often build intense loyalty during challenges, shared goals, pressure situations, or moments where cooperation matters. Emotional bonding sneaks in through shared movement and shared purpose. And when intimacy carries that same feeling of togetherness, it begins touching something much deeper inside him. Instead of feeling pressure to perform or lead perfectly, he begins feeling like both of you are participating together, discovering each other together, experiencing the moment together. That shift changes everything because it replaces pressure with connection. When intimacy feels heavy, loaded with expectations, or emotionally overwhelming, many guarded men retreat into their heads. They start feeling observed, evaluated, or responsible for carrying the emotional weight of the moment. But when the energy becomes mutual, relaxed, playful, and emotionally shared, he has room to stay present instead of mentally escaping. Instead of thinking, I need to get this right, he starts feeling, we are in this together. And that small emotional shift creates far more connection than most people realize. Presence builds attachment. Pressure quietly destroys it. So rather than making intimacy feel like a test or a moment filled with hidden emotional meaning, create space for curiosity, mutual participation, and emotional ease. Let it feel alive instead of emotionally heavy. Let him feel with you instead of feeling responsible for managing everything alone. And if you have noticed him becoming distant after deeply intimate moments, this may explain part of what is happening. It is not always that he wants less connection. Sometimes he simply does not know how to stay emotionally relaxed inside closeness unless it feels safe, mutual, and free from silent expectations. There is another important piece people rarely talk about. After intimacy, some men do not naturally move toward openness. They move toward emotional shutdown. Not because the moment meant nothing to them, but because deep closeness can activate stress inside their nervous system. So while you are hoping for emotional softness afterward, his mind may already be trying to create internal space again. That is why he can seem emotionally far away even while sitting right beside you. On the outside, he may appear calm, but internally part of him is already retreating, trying to regulate the intensity of closeness he just experienced. When you do not understand this pattern, it becomes easy to mistake his distance for rejection. So you try harder. You ask more questions, seek reassurance, or push for emotional talks at the exact moment his system already feels overwhelmed by closeness. The more pressure he feels, the more he pulls away, and the cycle repeats until confusion slowly becomes conflict. You wonder, how can he feel distant right after we were so close? Meanwhile, he may be thinking, why does this suddenly feel emotionally heavy? Neither of you fully sees the hidden stress happening underneath the moment. But once you understand this, everything starts changing. You stop taking every shift personally. You stop forcing connection at the wrong time. You learn when to lean in and when to give space, so closeness can settle naturally instead of turning into tension. What works better is creating an experience that feels shared from beginning to end. Real connection grows when both people are emotionally present together, not when one person silently hopes intimacy alone will build the relationship. Bring your energy into the moment. Smile, laugh, react honestly, change the pace together. Let him feel that you are with him, not just available to him. Men who fear closeness often relax more when intimacy feels playful and mutual instead of pressured or performative. That is why communication matters more than people realize. Not deep analysis, just simple connection. A little curiosity, honesty, or humor can pull him out of his head and back into the moment. Silence sometimes creates distance, while shared interaction creates presence, and presence builds emotional memory. Another important piece is removing the hidden pressure around what intimacy is supposed to prove. Many women secretly hope it will finally become the breakthrough that makes him fully certain about the relationship. Even unspoken, he often feels that pressure, and pressure makes guarded people guard themselves even more. Instead of making intimacy carry the emotional weight of the whole relationship, let it become part of a larger pattern of trust, teamwork, honesty, and emotional safety. When intimacy feels like a test, both people become tense, but when it feels like a bridge, connection grows naturally. Do not confuse passion with attachment. Do not assume silence means depth. Pay attention to how the experience feels for both of you. Does he leave feeling pressure or partnership? Does he tense up or soften? Once you understand the difference between temporary intensity and real emotional connection, you stop chasing crumbs and start building something healthier, calmer, and more genuine together. And once you see that clearly, you never go back to confusing intensity for love again. You start choosing connection that is steady, mutual, and real, even when it feels quieter than the chaos you used to mistake for closeness.